Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Educational Athletic Director. This is also the FIAAA Insider. Our guest today is Dan Talbot. Dan is a certified Master Athletic Administrator, and he's the District AD for the Polk County School District in Polk County, Florida. Dan, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having me, Jake. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, glad to have somebody of your caliber. As you know, athletic directors are busy. It's a busy time of year, so we're going to jump right into it. We always like to start off the podcast by giving the athletic directors a chance to tell their stories. So, tell the folks about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school, how you got to where you are now.
Okay. So my father was in the military. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My father was stationed in Plattsburgh. And of course, with any kind of military family, you're on the move, and did a good portion of my growing up in Travis Air Force Base out in California. And then right before I was getting ready to go into high school, my father got orders to Japan, and there was another gentleman in his unit that got orders to Alaska. My father didn't want to go to Japan. I didn't want to go to Japan either. And the guy he was talking to didn't want to go to Alaska. And at that time in the military, I don't know if it's changed now, but you had to do 2 overseas tour of duty. Obviously, he did one in Italy before I was born, and Alaska counted as a second. So they were talking, and I don't want to go to Japan. I don't want to go to Alaska. And they're like, I'd rather go to Japan. And my father said, I'd rather go to Alaska. So they went into the commander, and he says, I don't care who goes where. Someone's going to Japan and someone's going to Alaska. So we moved up to Alaska, and I finished middle school up there and started my high school career in Alaska. Enjoyed it. It was a different way of life. Basically, it's normal, just like any other place. But in the summertime, the sun does not go down. In the wintertime, the sun does not go up. And I was fortunate enough to get into sports there. I played high school football in Anchorage, Alaska, played hockey. I did track. I did everything you possibly could, as a young athlete in high school, to play everything I could. I did end up getting out of hockey and concentrating on football. Some people say I was probably a better hockey player than I was football player, just because I like the contact. I actually still play hockey today. It was one of those things where I play in an adult league over in Brandon, Florida, and because I missed it so much. So I'm a big advocate of play everything you can for as long as you can, because there's going to come a point in time in your life when you just can't do that anymore. But I was fortunate enough when I got done playing high school that I had some opportunities. Obviously, I was like anyone else. Out of high school, I wanted to go to Penn State or Notre Dame. And then when you find out you're an offensive lineman and you're 6 foot tall, there's not many opportunities. So then my next goal was to go to University of Rhode Island. I think it was just as far away from Alaska as I could. I was tired of the snow, even though, the winters in the Northeast are probably relatively same, just not as long. Alaska has 2 seasons. We call it winter and breakup. So I was fortunate enough to go to a Division II school in Western Colorado. I had a great career there, enjoyed every moment of my time, being able to basically use my body and my athletic abilities to get a college education. I was your typical college student. I was there. My parents finally asked, was I going to graduate anytime soon? Because I had 5 years of eligibility, because I redshirted my first year. So I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in sociology. And I kind of feel like I later in my career, I wanted to go into teaching. So I had the opportunity to stay at the school that I played and get another degree in kinesiology, and with a minor in education. And I was all set, ready to go back to Alaska and do student teaching and become a teaching. How I got into coaching, there's a football camp up in Alaska that's pretty big. They always called me, since I was a player from Alaska, they wanted me to be a camp counselor. So I started doing that, and that's where I met a lot of college football coaches, a lot of NFL players, and really enjoyed coaching. So that's when I knew I wanted to coach. So I was all set to go back. It was my last year of school. I only took one class in the spring. It was a college algebra class. I'm not a big fan of math, so I figured I'll put the pressure on me. I like pressure. I like last minute situations. I guess you could say I want the ball in my hands or the puck on my stick. You know, I want to be the one to take the last shot. So I figured I'm not good at math. Let's save it till the end. If I pass it, I graduate. If I don't, then I'll be back another semester. So I had the opportunity to go to Texas as a graduate assistant at Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas. Um, and graduate assistant job is everything that you've ever heard. It's a little bit different at Division II than Division I, because in Division II the graduate assistants are actually coaching a position, and you do have some responsibilities. My college football coach, who I still talk to today, gave me some advice. He said, don't speak till spoken to. Don't answer a question unless it's directly asked to you. And no one likes anyone that's disloyal. So if you're there and it's not the place for you, don't badmouth anybody. Just leave at the end of the year, go find another position, because if you get tagged as a disloyal coach, it's going to be very hard for you to make it in this business. So fortunately, it was a great situation for me. I was able to get my master's. It was long days and nights. It was 2 years of a blur because we were up at 5 a.m. lifting weights. I had to teach classes. I taught weightlifting classes, fencing classes, golf classes, walking classes, all the activity courses as graduate assistants we had to teach at that level. And then we had football basically till the wee hours of the night, and then we went to class probably till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So the GA was a great experience, a lot of hard work, a lot of hours, and I was fortunate enough. And then when I got my master's degree in kinesiology from Midwestern State, obviously I was looking for a college job. That's what I wanted to do. At that point in time in my career, it was tough to break in. It was about who you knew, and it was difficult. I was fortunate enough. My college roommate in Colorado was from Florida, and it was interesting because the coach in Colorado basically said, let's take the kid from Florida and let's take the kid from Alaska. And he actually roomed us together because he figured we wouldn't make it. We wouldn't survive, because a lot of people during the 2 days in college, they call it the night train. They're going to take the night train out of town in the middle of the night. They're going to quit. And so his philosophy was, let's put the two kids from the farthest away lands from Colorado, because they're going to leave. And that way I can get the money back on the room. If I put the kid from Alaska with the kid from Colorado, the kid from Colorado is going to stay, and I still got to pay full price for that room and only have one body in there. So it was interesting, and he tells the story that he put us together, and actually, we became best friends. I lived 35 minutes from him. He was the best man in my wedding. I was the best man in his wedding. So when it came time to find a job, he got me to come down to Florida. I interviewed at DeSoto High School in Arcadia, Florida, Venice High School in Venice, and then Hardy High School in Wauchula, Florida. I felt the best situation for me was to come on as an assistant at DeSoto High School. Was there my first year as a defensive coordinator, and it was culture shock to me. High school football and college football are completely different. In college, you could recruit the athletes that you wanted. You went out and find the people that you thought were going to help you. And in high school football, you have the kids that want to be there, the kids that just want to be a part of the team. And then you got a whole bunch of kids that just because their dad played, they're going to play. And you got to make those kids, especially in a rural situation like I was in Arcadia, there weren't kids coming in and out. The recruiting and the transferring schools just didn't happen. You had your kids, and it was nice because you could form a relationship with those kids when they were younger, through middle school and in high school. So in 2000, I got the head coaching position in Arcadia. Uh, Enjoyed it. Was I ready to be the head coach? Absolutely not. They should never hired me, but they did. Look, back then I had all the answers. I mean, it was interesting because when I got the head job, I was already designing state championship rings and T-shirts because I thought it was easy. And then, of course, it doesn't help nothing. Your first play from scrimmage, you go 80 yards for a touchdown, and of course that did not help any either because I was like, this thing's easy. But I took my lumps and bruises. After 3 years, I didn't win enough games to their satisfaction. And part about being the head coach in a small town like that is part of the responsibilities is to be the athletic director. I had no desire to be an athletic director. I became an athletic director because it came with the position of being head football coach. So that was my first stint as athletic director is part of the job. So you have to do both. So I did those, and I enjoyed being both. You took a lot of criticism when you're the head football coach and the athletic director because you get blamed for funneling all the money to one sport and the other sports, suffer. So I learned at an early age, you got to be, perception is reality and things like that. A lot of people don't understand that. So after my 2003 season there, I was let go. As the athletic director, as the football coach, they wanted me to stay on as the athletic director for the remainder of the year. We basically negotiated, and I told them I would on one condition. I had nothing to do with the football schedule because I didn't want to get blamed for next year. If they didn't win, they'd said I'd stack the schedule against them. So I completely removed myself from the scheduling process and actually got a job at Texas A&I. It's a Division II powerhouse school in Kingsville, Texas. Darrell Green played there. John Randall played there. So there was a lot of talent there. And at the time they were going through a name change and they changed all those schools in Texas and basically Texas A&I, because the rumor was when I coached in Texas, if you wanted to get paid in college, you went to Texas A&M. If you wanted to get paid in the NFL, you went to Texas A&I. It was the caliber of athletes that were there. So I got the offensive line job there and was real excited. But during that time, they were changing over the names. And so Texas A&I became Texas A&M Kingsville. So I had one day to get all my information sent to HR. I did that. The lady went to lunch. Something happened. She could not return to the office and process my paperwork. So they were basically said, the job's yours, but we can't pay you till August. This is January. Well, obviously, when you're young and you got a house in Florida and a car payment, the bills aren't going to wait because your job can't pay you. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I was in the office one day in the weight room, actually, and Bill Castle from Lakeland High School called and basically said, "Hey, I heard you need a job." And I said, "I do." He goes, "Well, would you come up to Lakeland tonight so we can talk?" So I got in my car and I drove up to Lakeland High School, met Bill Castle at Lakeland High School. I didn't know anything about Lakeland High School or anything. The only time I knew about Lakeland High School was we were coming home from a game one night in DeSoto and all the kids were going crazy because Lakeland had lost to Haines City 2-0. And the kids couldn't believe Lakeland lost, that the streak was over. And I leaned over to one of my assistant coaches and said, "Who's Lakeland?" And they go, it's a powerhouse, they're the big football program in our area. And so I was fortunate enough, I went up and interviewed with Coach Castle, with him one-on-one. And then we went out that night for him to introduce me to the rest of the staff. Took the position at Lakeland High School, was an assistant coach there, coached football, ran the defense, was assistant head coach, had a great opportunity. And during that time, around 2008, the economy was hit pretty hard. So schools were cutting positions. We had an offensive line coach that was in the PE department with me, and he was looking to lose his job. And we were trying to be creative on ways to keep our staff there. We didn't really know what we were going to do. I was sitting in my office one day, just got done with PE. The principal from Lakeland High School, she just became the principal. She was going to be the principal the next year. She walked down to my office and says, "I need someone I can trust to be my athletic director, and you're now my athletic director." And she walked out, and that's how I became the athletic director at Lakeland High School. So it was two instances where I had no desire to be the athletic director, but after we talked, it was one of those situations where I could leave the PE department. The offensive line coach would stay in the PE department. I wouldn't have classes and become the athletic director. And it was interesting because I told my principal, it's amazing what you can get away with, in the earlier days. I told my principal, I said, I'll be your athletic director as long as you understand that you're getting a football coach. That's the AD, not an athletic director that coaches football. And she was happy with that. And my main thing was I didn't want to be interrupted at football practice and deal with a cross country issue or something like that, because I felt it was important once I was on the field with my student athletes that we weren't interrupted, that they had 100% of my time, because I think they deserve that. And I didn't want to have to push them aside to go deal with an issue. And my principal is very supportive, that says, I can deal with cross country or anything that comes up. So it's interesting. I never took my cell phone to any practice. I was the athletic director at Lakeland High School, never had my cell phone at any practice. And the community support was unbelievable for me because I never took my cell phone to games. And only one instance that my secretary came up to me on the sideline and says, we have a problem. And that's when we were playing Fleming Island in the state semifinals. And the head football coach went up to the press box and ripped all the wires out of the Jumbotron because the music was too loud, but we had to deal with that. But so I got put into an AD position and really started to enjoy it. My principal always told me that I could be a really good AD, but all my time, she goes, you're a good AD, but you could be better, but all your time goes to football and with the demands of football. And people always ask me, how could you be Lakeland football, be the athletic director and do all those things? I say, at the time I was single. So people didn't see me in the office at 10 o'clock at night. When they were home with their families, I was making up the time doing the work because I was single, didn't answer to anybody. Had a lot of experience. I was fortunate enough when I was in Texas to go back a little bit. I interned with the Dallas Cowboys in 1998. I also had I was a guest coach with the CFL with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in 2003, 2004. So I've been fortunate enough where I've been everywhere. So I'm very humble. But of all the places I've been, college and then with Dallas in 98 and with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I enjoyed high school kids. I learned to enjoy coaching high school kids. And I found so much respect for high school coaches just for the fact that you're taking kids and you're making them student athletes and football players. And, it's a tough challenge. So that my respect level for high school coaches, I've met some of the best coaches that are at the high school level that, could coach any college coach under the bus any given day. Because there's so much more to being a high school football coach, because you're essentially their parent and their guardian. You're their mentor, you're their friend, you're their father, you're their coach. There's so many more hats you wear when you're at the high school level. So I really enjoyed it. And one of the great joys I had at Lakeland was we had a lot of success. There's no doubt about that. But I think the most rewarding moment is when, for me, is when my former players would come to a game or come to a practice and they wanted me to meet their wife and their kids, because obviously I knew I had an impact in their life. And it's amazing how many kids come back to see me, and I do a great job of keeping in contact with them. I always had a rule when any kid that would go off to college that was fortunate enough, I would call them once a week, and we could not talk about football until we got done talking about their grades and their academics and are they staying out of trouble. I didn't want to talk football. So it was hard to, when Mike and Marquise win the national championship and I want to talk academics before all they want to do is tell me how they won the national championship with Tim Tebow, and I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to talk grades and see how they're doing and, and be a part of their lives and do those different things. So I really enjoyed it. But I was still a coach. And then I got to a point, I got married. I moved to Winter Haven. So I was about 30 minutes outside of Lakeland. So the drive every day. And I just kind of got one of those situations where I really felt I could do all I could do coaching. I didn't have any more to prove. I didn't have a desire to be a head coach. All these young kids that want to be a head coach, I really don't think they understand what it takes. You really don't coach anymore. And I had such a great time at Lakeland just coaching. And that's all I had to worry about. As a head coach, you got to worry about what happens if the bus doesn't show up on time? Is the pregame meal going to be there? Because all that stuff falls on you. And I was there at a young age being a head coach and didn't deserve to be a head coach and shouldn't have been. But I really got back to enjoying coaching. So the athletic director to me at that time was it was something that I had to do in order to do the thing that I wanted to do. And then as life progressed, I got married, and we had a county athletic director in Polk County, and that job interested me. It was pretty funny because back in 2004, a buddy of mine has a picture. The county AD at the time was Don Bridges, and he had a county athletic director truck, and he was in charge of driver's education. I taught driver's ed during the summer, make a little extra money. And I remember taking a picture next to the truck saying it's going to be mine one day. And then, of course, when I got this job, he sent me that picture, and we had a good laugh about it. So when I knew Don was getting close to retirement, I kind of weighed my options and asked, what was I going to do? And with me living in Winter Haven, I moved right next door to the principal at Winter Haven High School. And she had a bad run of athletic directors. There's some situations that, had came up at Winter Haven High School that, they had about 3 or 4 athletic directors in a 2-year span. We know the longevity in this business is not very high. So with our conversations just over the fence line, it basically came up as, would you come to Winter Haven? And my wife graduated from Winter Haven High School, so she got excited. And the coaching aspect was tough. We were looking to start a family, and I knew that I couldn't do both if I wanted to be the father that I want to be. And I figured I could be the athletic director and come home after school. And if I had to go back to cover an event, obviously my kids could come with me and do that, but I couldn't do that with coaching. And, coaching is difficult because I've been at a lot of levels where I never wanted to come home to a note. Because when I was in college, I was the guy that had a 2-bedroom apartment, and there was plenty of nights that there was assistant coaches staying over because their wife kicked them out. So I saw the toll the business can take coaching on a family. So I never wanted that. So I decided, let me go to Winter Haven and just be the athletic director. And man, I had 2 great years at Winter Haven. I enjoyed it. The first year we won the Sportsmanship Award for the FHSA, and things were just rolling from there, and had a good time. And then the district athletic director position came open. There was another athletic director in this county that had more experience than I did, and I just wanted to give it a shot and throw my name in the hat. I felt if I got an interview that I could do well in the interview. And I was fortunate enough where they did offer me the position, and man, it's been a blessing ever since. I enjoy my position. There is some downfalls, when you get out of coaching and you're all about building relationship with student athletes. You become an athletic director at a school, you tend to lose a little bit of that, but you can still, get involved. When I was at Winter Haven High School, I made it a point to go practice one day with every team. So, and as you can tell, I'm a big boy, so jumping in the swimming pool with the swim team was interesting. Winter Haven is predominantly, they have a unbelievable girls basketball team. It was probably one of the worst decisions I made, but I came out and practiced one day with the girls basketball team, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. They ran me up and down, and, he presses, so I had to press. And then, and those girls, and you got girls going to Connecticut and Kentucky, and they can play some ball, and they absolutely abused me that day. So it was fortunate enough that's my way of wanting to stay involved with kids. And I remember the girls basketball coach came in my office one day at lunch to talk about something. 8 of his girls were in my office just hanging out and eating lunch. And he said, "Coach, this has never happened before." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "The athletes want to come hang out with you." And I said, every job I interviewed for, I always told them this: I work for the student athletes. I don't work for the principal. Because I figure if the student athletes are happy, the parents are happy, and then the principal is going to be happy. And it always attacked it from that end, is I am the voice and advocate for the student athletes, and that's who I work for. And I had to build that relationship with those kids that they can come talk to me about their coach and not run back and tell the coach. And once you build that connection with the student athletes, it's a great experience. And then going to the district office, so you're in charge of one high school, and then all of a sudden you inherit 14. So that was interesting for me, because we're in a state of our society and in our world where one sheet of paper should be a cookie cutter sheet for 14 different high schools. And I always went with the approach that there's 14 different high schools. I'm going to treat them 14 different ways and not treat everyone the same. We're going to have our set rules we're going to follow as a county, but I'm going to take each school and the situations that have come. But it's been a great experience for me. I enjoy being the district athletic director. I say that, but we are in difficult times now where it is stressful because you got 14 schools, you got 1,000 coaches looking at you going, when do we start practice? When are we going to be able to play? And wanting answers to questions we can't answer right now. So this has obviously since March has been a very stressful position because you're taking into account student safety, you're taking into account the coach's well-being and things like that. So they are getting their money out of me this year for sure, but I really enjoy it. But the one thing that no one can prepare you for, and I've talked to a few people, not just in my department, because I really didn't know any other district athletic directors before, so I had no one to talk to. So I did a lot of talking to the people that were principals and coaches and worked their way up, and now we're at the district office, and they all said the same thing. There's no one can prepare you. You're going to miss the kids, and you got to be creative in ways to still stay involved with the kids. So one thing I've done is I have meetings, in the district that are open to all student athletes. And one of my things I talk about a lot is the NCAA. But that's kind of been my way to be involved with the student athletes is try to give them some of my knowledge I have. So that's kind of, me in a nutshell.
Wow. I didn't realize how many parallels you and I had, but great experiences. Obviously, they've helped shape you. Let's talk about that for a little bit. In your travels as a high school athlete, a college athlete, working with professional programs, and then as an administrator, just maybe in a minute or two, who have been some of your key mentors that have allowed you to learn and build your leadership resume?
Oh, the first one obviously is my father. We butted heads when I was a kid, obviously, both type A personalities, but he was military. And until this day, the only time I get anxiety about anything is with time constraints. And it's not the time, but if I have a meeting at 10 o'clock, I want to make sure I'm there ready by 9:30. Because in my household growing up, when I was supposed to be home, I remember when I came home as a kid, my father used the traditional method: ninth grader, 9 p.m., 10th grader, 10 p.m., 11th grader, 11 p.m., and 12th grader, 12 p.m. That's standard, when you're supposed to be home. And I remember in ninth grade, I came home and I walked in the door and it was 9 o'clock and 15 seconds and I was late. And there was no excuse. And it was unacceptable. And people always ask me, how come your hair's so short all the time? And it's just that, I went to the barber on base and that's how they cut my hair. I mean, so my father was a big influence. And then obviously, my college football coach. I mean, he doesn't understand the time difference. He lives in Oregon now. He doesn't understand there's a 3-hour difference. So when he calls at 1 a.m. to say hi because he's up, I don't think he understands time change. But obviously, my college football coach has been a great mentor and he's a great friend today.
You mentioned earlier your work with the NCAA. You've sort of become the last couple of years Florida's guru on all things with NCAA eligibility. How'd that happen, and how do you stay current on all of the changes?
Basically, it happened when I was coaching at Lakeland. We had a tremendous amount of student athletes, and it was, I remember when I was going to college, all I needed a 700 on the SAT. That's all I needed, and I got that in my sleep. I think I went to bed at like 5 a.m. and got up at 6 o'clock and drove over to a high school and took the SAT and got, I don't even know what I got, but I knew I was going to get a 700. But nowadays the rules were changing, and the NCAA stance is it's the parent's responsibility. And if you know anything about high school coaching, you are the parent. I mean, you really are, and you have to. So I just started making sure kids were eligible and just took on that role. I mean, the guidance counselors have a lot of other responsibilities they had to do, and their main focus is to make sure they graduate high school. That's what they're there for. And I always felt it's my job to find a kid a home in the college level, and if they're ready for college, then they're going to graduate as well too. So I just kind of took that on at Lakeland, and started making spreadsheets and started tracking kids from the ninth grade and the courses that they took, and developed spreadsheets that tracked them, and then had file folders, and just kind of evolved. And then I wake up one morning and I got all these people asking me about the NCAA. It just kind of happened by accident, really. But I enjoy that part of it. I've had many of conversations, good and bad, with the NCAA, but over the years, I've been fortunate enough to form a great relationship with them. I have many people that I talk to on weekly and monthly basis. I have their personal cell phones and we can talk. I mean, when this whole COVID thing was coming out, I was getting information before it was released to the public to prepare. And I basically, anytime I'm at the National AD Conference, I'm going to attend the NCAA segment. It was interesting because in Washington, D.C., I did a breakout session on the NCAA, and the actual NCAA showed up to my session to see what I had to say about them. But I just want to get the word out. I think it's important for, the coaches to have, because there's a lot of coaches out there that don't take responsibility with the NCAA. They think their job is just a coach. But I always wanted to make sure that they were headed in the right direction, because I never wanted to see a kid miss out on an opportunity that I had to go play college football. Yeah, I was at the Division II level, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, I wanted to run out in front of 100,000 people at Penn State. But I look back, and my lifelong friends were my college roommates, and they were all in my wedding, and we still talk to these days. We take vacations together. So it was a great experience, and I wanted every student athlete to have that opportunity. And if they didn't make it, it wasn't going to be because they took the wrong class or they didn't get a test score. And with it ever changing and how difficult it is, I just found myself reading a lot and getting up to date. And I have spreadsheets, and the best thing I like about, and I say this every time I give a speech somewhere, the best thing about being an athletic director is I no longer have to lie to you. I can tell you the truth, because athletic directors are a unique bunch where we all have the same problems. We have the same issues. And I can give you an idea on how to deal with people and deal with situations, because that's what I want to do. As a coach, I was always nervous. If I gave you too much information, would it come back and haunt me on a Friday night? Would there be a chance we would play each other on a Friday night? So I was never going to give you enough information because I didn't want to lose to you. But now as an athletic director, I share everything that I have. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to do the best for student athletes. And I think it's important to share. And there's been great people in Florida, and being part of the NIAAA has really expanded my mind. And I've met some great people around the nation. I was fortunate enough to be in the NIAAA cohort this year. I'm going through it right now. And the wealth of knowledge, just dealing with people from Oregon to California to Utah, and you have so many similarities in your work, and you become friends. And that cohort thing is the best way I can describe it is an undescribable experience. It's a lot of work. Jake, as you know, you went through it last year. It is a lot of work, and the work comes up like, oh, I got homework due and this and that. But man, the NIAAA cohort has been probably one of the best experiences as an athletic director.
No, I would concur. And going back to the NCAA for a bit, you did just a fantastic job this past spring at our virtual conference, getting 3 representatives from the NCAA to attend our Zoom conference. Just fantastic, great resource. You also brought up COVID, and the one thing that you and I have seen here in Florida is that there is no single answer. What are some things that you are doing right now in Polk County with your coaches, with your athletic directors, with the Polk County plan for reopening? So whatever that is, what are some things that you're doing right now that you can share with our athletic directors?
So we began our summer conditioning on June 15th, and obviously we broke it up into 3 phases, kind of the standard norm as everyone else. Our first phase was no more than 10 people inside and no more than 10 people outside. Um, and what we wanted to do, we understood that transportation issues with our student athletes, obviously. So we were kind of a little bit different than some other counties. We allowed 10 people on the football field, and we counted the football field as a location. But if another coach wanted to work with 9 more student athletes in the outfield of baseball, then the baseball field was a location. We work with them on start times and stagger times, because if you got 10 on the baseball field, 10 on the softball field, 10 on the football field, and 10 in the weight room, well, you got 40 student athletes. Now they're going to gather and they're going to hang out in the parking lot and not go home. So we did our stagger times. We started phase 2 this week. We kept the indoor limit the same. We increased our outdoor activities to larger groups. We just added recently, and it's modifying and changing all the time. I mean, our phases never dealt with wearing masks on the indoor. With the recent spike, we've added wearing masks if we're going to be indoors, whether it's in the gym or the weight room. The one thing that everyone kind of said and working together is no use of water fountains and water cows. And what we found out is we had to add the use of a water cow to our workouts. We have one coach, unfortunately, it's the youngest guy on the staff probably. He's monitoring that thing 24/7. No kids are allowed to use a water cow. The coach will refill their water bottles. But we just found out that, some student athletes just don't have access to water bottles. So a lot of schools are, going to Sam's and Publix and providing their own water bottles, and they can get them. But we introduced the use of a water cow that has to be supervised by the coach 24/7 and sanitized after each use. We have been fortunate in Polk County versus other counties. We haven't had a student athlete test positive. I think the coaches are doing a magnificent job. We're doing the screenings before they enter. We're taking the temperatures before they enter. We're doing everything we can to provide a safe environment for the student athletes. The thing that scares me is they're only with us 2 hours a day, and we don't control the other 22 hours that they do. So a lot of it is, part of our workout is educating the students to wash their hands, don't touch their face, all the things, don't drink after each other. A lot of part is educating the student athletes, because, we got to have faith in that they're hopefully going to do the right thing the 22 hours they're not with us. So we've been very fortunate enough. We've had some student athletes that had contact with someone that hasn't got it. So we've removed them from obviously for the workouts and made arrangements for them to get tested if need be. But we are fortunate, knock on wood, right now that things are going smoothly. The one thing I explained to my superintendent when we first explored the option of coming back to some conditioning is I wasn't worried about the coaches. The coaches were so hungry to see their kids, especially if you hire coaches that truly love student athletes. They're going to do anything you tell them to do as long as they can get in front of their student athletes. Because I think, they had a void in their life for so long of missing them, because a lot of them, that is their life. Those kids are their life. And for that to be taken away with them, you could have told them they had to do anything and they would have done it. I was worried about how many coaches we were going to lose, because when I got out of coaching, first my college roommate got out of coaching and I couldn't believe it. I thought he was, what are you doing? I couldn't understand it, couldn't process it. He goes, when you get out of coaching, you'll understand. And when I got out of coaching and realized, man, I'm home at 3:00, I can go fishing, or I can do this, or I can go work out, or I had all this extra time on my hands and I was actually enjoying it. I understood that, there is life outside of coaching. So I was a little bit worried about our coaches realizing that there is more to life outside of coaching, but so far so good here in Polk County. Everyone's back.
Well, that's good to hear. Let's go ahead and move to our wrap up. We always like to close out with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. You're a veteran AD, obviously lots of success in different environments. If you were going to put together a toolbox for a brand new AD in your district, what are the 3 things that you would put in that toolbox to help that new AD have a successful year?
For me, I mean, there's so many. The three things I think I would, one is I would write them a little note, be flexible. We learned as young, I mean, we've learned the hard way that you can have a to-do list on your desk of things you need to accomplish that day, and you never get to them. You never get to them. They have to basically, in Florida, I'm going to give them the red book and say, read it. And people think they don't need to read the book. They think they know the rules. I was one of those high school football coaches that carried the rule book in them because I was always going to be right with the officials, and I would call them out. But obviously the red book, be flexible. And the one thing I think, probably the third one and probably the most important is young athletic directors, when parents call or something happens, you got to realize you didn't do it. It's your job to fix it. And be understanding and be compassionate. And it's more about just being a people person. I tell this to all the principals in Polk County. I said, you pick who you want as the AD. I can work with anybody, but I can't teach them how to talk to parents. I can't teach them how to be compassionate. They got to have that within them. I can tell them when the AT 17 form is due for the FHA. I can work all those matters, but I think three things is you got to, young ADs, be flexible, be compassionate, and always be a man of your word. I think, to me, a promise is a promise. And to me, if I give you my word that I'm going to do something, then I'm going to stick to it. And that word means more than a signed contract, because anybody can sign my name to a contract and forge it if they want to. But if I give you my word, I just think is you got to be flexible. You got to know the rules, and you got to have compassion.
Well, great stuff. Thanks a lot. Well, we appreciate everybody watching today, listening today. Tune in next Monday. Remember, our episodes appear every Monday. Next episode will be Pam Lancaster. Pam's the athletic director at Auburndale High School. She's doing some great things down there. Dan, thanks for being on. You and I will see each other coming up at a couple FIAAA Zooms, but thanks so much for being here today.
Jake, it's always a pleasure. It's always good to see you and talk to you, and enjoy it all the time. I can't, thank you enough for all the hard work you're doing and for the leadership you're taking as an athletic director and promoting what we do. So it's greatly appreciated. I thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Everybody have a great day, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.